Hikaru is renowned as one of the fastest, deadliest, and remarkably precise players of all time, boasting numerous tournament victories and even defeating Magnus Carlsen on various occasions. Hikaru has solidified his noteworthy presence in the realm of chess. But what happens when he plays against a rising super talent? This is Tani Adewumi, a 12-year-old chess prodigy who claimed the prestigious title of FIDE Master at a very young age. Tani starts the game by moving his pawn to e4, and Hikaru immediately replies with his pawn to c5, going for the Sicilian defense. Both players develop their knight and we see a pawn exchange on d4. After playing a couple of developing moves, the game turns into a pretty standard position with Tani's knight on c3 and d4, and Hikaru's knights on c6 and f6, with his bishop sitting on g7 eyeing the diagonal. After some thought, Tani chose to move his bishop to prepare for a kingside castle, while Hikaru played it safe by moving his king for added protection. In response, Tani moved his bishop back, prompting Hikaru to challenge it with his knight on a5. Currently, the game is quite balanced, with Tani holding a slight advantage. However, this equilibrium may not last. The dynamics of their moves hint at an imminent shift. The strategic back and forth between these two skilled players promises an exciting contest. Tani develops his queen, and Hikaru replies by developing his bishop to d7. Tani decides to go for the offense and attacks Hikaru's bishop by placing his bishop on h6, neglecting the thought of trading the bishops. Hikaru simply goes for a pawn move. While Tani should castle here, he instead goes for pawn to f3, defending his e4 pawn, but making his king a little less safe. Now folks, if you're enjoying the strategic showdown between Tani and Hikaru as much as we are, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. We promise that your chess game won't improve by just liking and subscribing, but you'll at least be entertained by more of these thrilling matches. Alright, back to the action. Fortunately for Tani, Hikaru commits a significant error at this point by playing e5, which allows Tani to capture a pawn after a subsequent exchange of bishops and knights. Tani seizes the opportunity to take the pawn on b5, and following a trade involving bishops and knights on b3, Hikaru makes yet another mistake. Knight to e4 might not seem like a bad move, especially since it can recapture material after a check. But this will leave Tani in a better position after pawn to g3, forcing a trade and winning a pawn. Hikaru's queen advanced to h4, delivering a check to Tani's king. However, Tani's response was less than ideal. He moved his knight to f2, effectively blocking the check but leaving his queen exposed to Hikaru's bishop. Recognizing the vulnerability, Hikaru seized the moment to target Tani's queen, prompting it to relocate. Tani, seemingly unsure of his moves, decided to shift his queen to d5, a move of minimal impact. Despite its apparent insignificance, this move effectively sealed Tani's fate. Hikaru promptly capitalized on the opportunity by directing his rook to target one of Tani's pawns, further tightening his grip on the game. The tide of the match had unmistakably turned in Hikaru's favor. Tani now faced a challenging uphill battle to regain control, as Hikaru continued to exploit the weaknesses created by Tani's earlier moves, establishing a commanding position with each tactical maneuver. Tani responds to his threat in a less than ideal manner. In a moment of distress, Tani defends his pawn by sliding his rook to c1, but Hikaru's bishop is already eyeing down that square, which allows Hikaru to capture this rook with his bishop. Tani blunders his rook and momentarily contemplates resignation, briefly revealing a hint of embarrassment. However, he regains his composure and proceeds to capture Hikaru's pawn on d6 with his knight. Hikaru persists by making a move with his rook to c2, setting up a potential checkmate in two moves on f2. Tani defends against this threat by moving his knight to e4. Tani is now in a desperate struggle to hang on, mainly counting on the clock to potentially secure a win against Hikaru. Unfortunately, Hikaru's speed and strength prove insurmountable. After relentlessly pressuring Tani's queen and attacking it, Tani decides to part with his queen in a trade. Nevertheless, Hikaru continues to tighten his grip in the chess match. In the final stages, he suffocates Tani in a chess strategy, relentlessly pursuing Tani's knight. Hikaru slides his bishop to e3, looking for a check with his rook on the very next move, but Tani did not even notice this simple tactic and proceeded by giving a check with his knight. Hikaru slides his king out of danger and Tani moves his knight back to d5. This move allows Hikaru to give a check with his rook and eventually winning Tani's rook. The position was completely winning for Hikaru now, but instead of resigning, Tani decides to continue the game and captures Hikaru's seemingly free bishop with his king. After a couple of more moves, both players trade a few pawns. Hikaru starts suffocating Tani. And after chasing down Tani's knight, Hikaru ends the game with a brutal rook ladder checkmate, resulting in a win for Hikaru Nakamura.